Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
I'm Jason Miller. Coming up on tonight's Evan Miller Report, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu slams President Obama's plan on diplomacy with Iran. This as Congress sneaks in the Homeland Security bill till September to Obama without conditions. Also on tonight's program, Jihad John's father says, quote, "No evidence my son is Jihad John." We have that report. Liberia's Johnson Sirleaf urges a Marshall Plan in trying to defeat Ebola. Hundreds are killed in Chad as forces seize northeastern Nigerian town from Boko Haram. And Corey Evan has the latest in a maternity suit going on with federal agents in California. Corey, tell us more.
Yes, apparently maternity tourism from China is happening in California, and it sounds to me like a load of global socialism. Elsewhere, the eruption of one of South America's most active volcanoes sends thousands fleeing. Best Buy brings back buyback. But where's Bieber? Believe me, he's not back for this one, bro. A Cleveland mom is suing the PD there because they blame her now-gone son for his own demise. Yeah. And even Edward Snowden is showing up on the big screen. Soon, that is. That's all coming up in the Evan Miller Report, your conservative news source. Let's get started now.
Along with Andrea Kaye on this Tuesday, March the 3rd, 2015. The Evan Miller Report starts right now.
Live from Southern California, this is the Evan Miller Report. Jason Miller with news and politics, Corey Evan with business and entertainment. This is the Evan Miller Report on SHR Media. Here now, Jason Miller.
And a very good evening on this Tuesday, March the 3rd, 2015. I'm Jason Miller along with Corey Evan this evening. We have a lot to get to this evening, so we're going to get right into it on the program tonight. And ladies and gentlemen, a very big day here in the United States. If you didn't have a chance to watch Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu speaking to that joint session of Congress this morning, my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, you missed quite the speech. I have never seen such a standing ovation for a foreign dignitary such as the Israeli Prime Minister before. And of course, coming up in a few minutes, Andrea Kaye of the Andrea Kaye Show from 1170 KZBQ in San Diego will be joining us to break down that speech and the passing of the Homeland Security bill today. It was snuck through. We'll have more on that in just a moment. But of course, over to our top story tonight, where Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu spoke to a joint session of Congress today. And for a breakdown of that speech and the day's other events in Washington regarding that speech, we're going to go over to the ITV's Robert Moore, who has more with this report.
Iran's neighbors know that Iran will become even more aggressive and sponsor even more terrorism when its economy is unshackled and it's been given a clear path to the bomb. And many of these neighbors say they'll respond by racing to get nuclear weapons of their own. So this deal won't change Iran for the better. It will only change the Middle East for the worse. A deal that's supposed to prevent nuclear proliferation would instead spark a nuclear arms race in the most dangerous part of the planet. This deal won't be a farewell to arms. It would be a farewell to arms control. And the Middle East would soon be crisscrossed by nuclear tripwires. A region where small skirmishes can trigger big wars would turn into a nuclear tinderbox. If anyone thinks this deal kicks the can down the road, think again. When we get down that road, we'll face a much more dangerous Iran, a Middle East littered with nuclear bombs, and a countdown to a potential nuclear nightmare.
Political drama we have rarely seen before. A key American ally coming before Congress to launch a quite extraordinary assault on a prized White House objective, a diplomatic deal with Iran.
The Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu.
Netanyahu has maneuvered behind the back of President Obama and was today appealing in a stunning breach of protocol to Republicans.
Well, this is a bad deal. It's a very bad deal. We're better off without it.
And then came the apocalyptic vision of what will happen if the president's diplomacy is not halted.
When we get down that road, we'll face a much more dangerous Iran, a Middle East littered with nuclear bombs, and a countdown to a potential nuclear nightmare. The days when the Jewish people remain passive in the face of genocidal enemies, those days are over.
With the applause of Republicans echoing across Washington, the president dismissed the speech as just fear-mongering.
On the core issue, which is how do we prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon, the Prime Minister didn't offer any viable alternatives.
Pointedly, he didn't even watch the speech on TV and refuses to meet Netanyahu. The theater was in Washington, but the action is in Switzerland, where negotiators, including Secretary of State John Kerry, are seeking to restrict Iranian nuclear capabilities.
We'll try. That's why we're here.
But the sincerity of the Iranians, or whether they are just playing for time, that is the great unknown. The question back here is whether Netanyahu has successfully rallied critics of that diplomacy, not least with his claim that Iran is a far greater threat than the Islamic State.
To defeat ISIS and let Iran get nuclear weapons would be to win the battle but lose the war. We can't let that happen.
The warning comes at a cost. The US-Israeli alliance, so strong for so long, is now under severe strain.
And that was the ITV's Robert Moore reporting on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's speech to a joint session of Congress today. And joining us now on the line, the host of the Andrea Kaye Show that airs on Thursday and Friday evenings locally in San Diego on 1170 KCBQ. The answer is Andrea Kaye. Andrea, good evening.
Hey, Jason, thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm thrilled to be here on the Evan Miller Report tonight.
Yeah, pleasure having you with us, as always. So let's get right to it, right off the bat. What did you think of the Israeli Prime Minister's speech? I don't think I have seen a speech that has got so much under attention by the national press, but never got such a standing ovation as the Prime Minister got today.
Yeah, well, first of all, I guess I should probably give the listeners a little disclaimer of the fact that I have a long-standing 20-plus year crush on Bibi. So pretty much anything Bibi does is a thrill to me because I am his biggest fan. But one of the things I want to say first and foremost is just the fact that he did it meant a lot to me because this was a man who came under a lot of fire from his own people as well as people here in America, some of which were Republicans and conservatives, and he did it anyway. And on a day in which Boehner, and I know you're going to talk about Boehner later in your program, on a day in which Boehner threw every American under the bus today, it meant a lot to me to see a real man of real courage behave like a real leader in front of the American people today.
And you know what? To make a comparison, this speech that the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu gave today, this is similar, and I only have been able to watch archives on this because I wasn't born during Churchill's time, but we haven't seen a speech like this since Winston Churchill spoke to the British Parliament.
No, I mean there were quite a few moving speeches that I can recall, or not speeches necessarily, but there were some incredible moments that Ronald Reagan gave the American people, one of which was, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. So to me, Reagan had some incredibly amazing moments as president, even in the run-up to being president. But in front of Congress, in my lifetime, I don't remember a speech like we saw today. And the American people were desperate to see real leadership today in front of Congress. And, no one to the left was apoplectic and hysterical over it because it was brilliant.
Well, I will say as much. I was watching my raw feed here in our newsroom today, and the only one who seemed to be having an emotional problem with the likes of the Prime Minister's speech seemed to be Nancy Pelosi, of all people. I saw her turn around at one point and was telling one of her colleagues, he needs to stop. We need to have him stop. She did not like what he was saying whatsoever. So it's like,
leave the guy alone, right?
Yeah, really. And on top of it, Nancy Pelosi was the only one there that I could see within the House of Representatives. On the Senate side, I only saw 2 Democrats there of big name that we know of. Harry Reid, who, surprisingly enough, the Israeli Prime Minister poked a little fun at and said, we're glad to have you back, Mr. Reid, despite your little ailment that you have here, and which forced Harry Reid to stand up and take a bow. I think Harry Reid was more embarrassed than anything today.
He should have been embarrassed because here he is being, kind of in a sense, in a passive-aggressive way, mocked by Bibi, who is like one of the greatest war heroes of all time for his generation and his people. And what's Reid's biggest, injury came from a supposed workout at home, right?
Yeah, it's certainly right. So it's like I was quite intrigued on that. We know that Israeli Prime Minister has a sense of humor. We didn't know how great that sense of humor certainly was today. So I'm glad.
Exactly.
I'm glad to see we certainly had the. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and quote what he said here from his speech, saying, quote, I also want to acknowledge Senator Democratic leader Harry Reid. Harry, it's good to see you back on your feet. Applause. I guess it's true what they say. You can't keep a good man down. Laughter from the audience, my friend. And so it looks like the Prime Minister did his research before coming into the House of Representatives today on both sides. And he does watch a little bit of U.S. news here and there, it looks like. And the only person other than Harry Reid that I saw in there was our senator here from California, Senator Dianne Feinstein from the Intelligence Committee was there today. But other than that, we saw the 24 Democrats walk out as John Boehner was introducing the session in today, right before Prime Minister Netanyahu came and spoke today.
Well, that's pretty good because from what I understand, there was such a request for seats there, they were having to bring in folding plastic chairs. So thank you to those Democrats, for giving up their seats to those who actually wanted to see it.
Well, Andrea, when you have to move us, the press, upstairs into that upstairs gallery, and I got a view up into the gallery today where I have been fortunate enough to sit once in the House chamber, and sitting in that chamber, that galley is only so big, you can only fit so many people, and the press was literally leaning on the railing out with their Mac computers. Some of them had Mac computers, some of them had Windows computers, but with their cameras and everything. When the press has to lean out on the balcony to be able to get a shot or even be able to cover this event, it's going to be a full house. And you know what? I say to the 24 Democrats, thank you for walking out today. You gave 24 other people a place to sit. So thank you.
Exactly. And they showed their.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I
was just going to say, and they showed their butts literally and figuratively, as we say in the South. They showed who they were. They were a bunch of jackwagons. Goodbye, good riddance. Don't come back, I say.
Certainly right about that. Now let's get down to the carrots and potatoes of this speech today.
Yep.
So he didn't spare no bullets. He really got right to it, saying today that some of it's widely known, like strengthening security, cooperation, intelligence sharing, opposing anti-Israeli resolutions, at the UN. He went after the UN right away today. He's not for the UN whatsoever, and is hating and dislikes the UN the way they treat Israel. And on top of it, he got right onto it in speaking about his country, how the U.S. helped in responding to the fires. And it's funny, my mother was in watching the speech, and my mother and I, we don't often disagree. We had two different interpretations of the speech. My mom thought she was giving President Obama too many compliments. He was giving President Obama too many compliments today, and I said, "Oh no!" I says he's putting Obama up on a higher pedestal, and then he's gonna grab the pedestal, literally yank it out from beneath Obama's feet, and then Obama is gonna come crashing down. And that's exactly
as he should.
That's exactly what the Prime Minister did today. And he did it quite well. He knew exactly what to do and come out to do it. And now the mainstream press can't go after the Prime Minister as much. They will still go after him, but they can't go after him as much now, considering he gave the president so many compliments.
Absolutely. I mean, I think he out-Obama'd Obama in the sense that Obama is supposed to be this brilliant man. He's supposed to be this great, incredible charmer and charismatic, bigger-than-life personality and this amazing leader, none of which have been verified by anything since he took office, including the intelligence part. Bibi out-Obama'd him from an intelligence standpoint in the fact that he was far smarter than Obama in the way he laid it out. He even laid it out starting not just with lifting Obama up and thanking him and giving him far greater respect than he deserved. But he actually then reminded the American people in reference to the story in Esther and bringing the Bible and reminding the American people of the Judeo-Christian principles of which this country was founded. We just taught that story on Esther in my Sunday school class with our children. So he out-Obama'd there. And the way he eased into it, and oh, by the way, he out-Obama'd Obama with the teleprompter. This was a man who owned that floor, owned that audience, and delivered
a teleprompter there, Andre. You brought up a great point. I didn't even see a teleprompter there. And I only saw him maybe look down once today, if anything. Mm-hmm. And he said he had everything memorized. And you have a great man in your midst there when he can have a speech such as that memorized, right down to the point.
That was Reagan, right. That's what Reagan used to do. Reagan did not use speechwriters. He wrote his own speeches, and he delivered them without a prompter, maybe with some reference points. And you know what? Thank you, because I assumed there was a prompter there. I didn't even realize there wasn't. So that makes him even greater in terms of out-Obamaing Obama, in terms of being this supposed great orator. And a couple of things that to me that really jumped out at me in terms of the substance was I love how he brought up the Bible and the Judeo-Christian principles and brought us together with him and showed a true partnership. And his line of this congressional dome built our Iron Dome. He was reminding them that this isn't about politics here. I'm not here to try to split the United States apart and be divisive. I'm here to unite everybody in America with the greatest ally, which is us, Israel. That's what I thought was genius.
Quite right, and I could hardly believe that he gave us a bit of a history lesson. And you brought up Esther with him, that, and how he brought up ancient Persia at least twice. And I know people don't usually talk religion here on this program, but it's amazing how the Israeli Prime Minister really knew his history and was warning the likes of the international community, hey, we've been here longer than any of you have. We've dealt with the likes of Persia before. What you guys do will depend on what happens to us with Persia again. Because look at the ancient Babylonians. They took the ancient Israelis away over to Babylon for so many years before the Israelis came back to their home country. I think the Israeli Prime Minister, he knows fully what is going on if Iran gets a nuclear power. And what further insults me more is we received this report 2 weeks ago that Obama has made some statements in the background that if the Israeli Air Force or any likes of the Israeli military decides to go after Iran, that he'd be willing to shoot the Israeli aircraft or Israeli forces out of the sky.
Absolutely. In fact, in referencing back to what Pelosi said, I didn't realize that she had said that, and I didn't see that. That it's just amazing to hear that she actually said he must be stopped. We must stop him. We haven't seen that kind of conviction in wanting to stop ISIS or the threat from radical Islam, as what you are describing came from her in stopping Bibi.
Right,
they're tweeting.
Right, and no other media has reported that, and it's like I have my eyes on the screen, and usually, ladies and gentlemen, I sometimes take notes during a speech, but usually my eyes are on the screen, and I look at people with people with high stature, whether it be Democrat or whether it be Republican, and she is considered the minority leader, and when you see her turning around, doing that, and of course I'm following on Twitter today. You were at EM Radio Report, following this on Twitter today, and Pelosi is giving Orrin Hatch, the person who's sitting in for Vice President Joe Biden, who's supposed to be the president of the Senate, but decided not to show up today, is looking at Orrin Hatch. Hey, why are you letting this guy run all over us? That's literally, I'm paraphrasing what she said. And then literally, you have the C-SPAN camera, and I love the technical director, whoever was working for C-SPAN today, because they went right over to her, and she was turning around, and I will tell you, ladies and gentlemen, Nancy Pelosi, I've never seen her having such a temper tantrum before. She was really having one today.
She's just a little bitty 4-year-old, the way she was crying and having a fit.
And what was so hysterical today? The fact that the leader of what is supposed to be our greatest ally has come here and to speak to the American people, he should always be given this type of welcome. We are supposed to be partners in this world, not just because we have shared Judeo-Christian values, but because they are God's chosen people. We are supposed to be allies with them. And instead of him being given the hero's welcome like he was given today and should have been given every time he's come here, we've got a president of the United States that has been disrespectful to him every time prior of his coming here to the United States.
Essentially,
what is your guys' theory? Pardon me?
Essentially, tars and feathers him every single time, so to speak.
Why do you think that is? What is your guys' theory as to why Israel is being treated like this by this administration?
I feel because Israel is standing up, not only standing up for American values, they're standing up against the likes of Islamic State, and they're standing up against the president's social agenda. That's what, because the president's social agenda, redistribution of wealth, we have heard this constantly. People not being able to defend themselves. We just had coming through yesterday, it's going in here through the state of California, on restricting ammunition. And I think what's going on here, Andrea, is we have an interfight between the conservatives and social democrats right now, right here within this nation, on who is going to be in control of this nation. Look at President Obama has 22 months left in his term before the 2016 elections. And you know what? President Obama said, made it ever so clear in our report from ITV's Robert Moore earlier that he didn't watch the speech today. And you know why he didn't watch the speech? Wow. Because he knew that what the Israeli Prime Minister said went against what his agenda is. And pretty much,
he knew he was going to get wiped.
His agenda has failed. President Obama's agenda has failed. Yes, he got health care, Obamacare in. That's pretty much his only achievement. The rest of his agenda has pretty much fallen
And that's
apart.
not even a good achievement.
Right, and I will state to the fact, this president has so many scandals, he makes Bill Clinton look like a marathon runner.
Mm-hmm. Well, I heard that Obama's criticism of the speech was that it didn't have any action in it. So first of all, Obama, you weren't going to watch the speech, so I don't know how you know what the content was. But second of all, why should Bibi? What action was Bibi supposed to have in his speech?
Watch in person.
True.
Yeah, he should have been there in person. But,
I agree.
but how hypocritical of Obama, who has no action plan to stop anything with radical Islam and won't even name who the enemy is criticizing Bibi for not having any action. I say that Bibi is setting the stage for action, and that basically this was the foundation for the I told you so move down the road, because Obama's going to go forward. He's going to, allow Iran to come up with a nuclear weapon, and as it gets close, Bibi's going to pull the trigger, and he's going to say, I told you so.
Certainly right. And you know what? I hope when it comes to the time that the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, will not notify the White House. I don't even want the U.S. to be notified. When it comes to push goes to shove, if this deal with Iran is passed, and when it comes to that time, whether it be 6 months, this is what Israel is predicting, unlike what we are predicting if Iran makes a nuclear weapon, is 1 year. But I hope when it comes to the time that Iran decides to make that nuclear weapon and decides to shove it off, that Prime Minister Netanyahu decides to attack without telling the U.S. Because you know what? I will trust this guy. I trust the Israeli Prime Minister more than this president that is currently in office right now. And ladies and gentlemen, I don't often say this on the program. I like Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, after he's finished in Israel, to come over and run here in the United States. We already have a president who doesn't have proper citizenship papers, so we already have a non-citizen running in the White House. Why not we have him? At least he'll do a good job.
Yes.
Well, he's the first person I've heard of in Washington. What's that, Evan?
There are so many people who would do much better than Obama. Unfortunately, it's just... He's hammered that point home so many different times.
Well, and I actually think that whether Republican or Democrat, he was the first leader that has come before the American people and said, listen up, America, the threat is militant Islam. He said today, he said, the battle between Iran and ISIS doesn't turn Iran into a friend of America. That's what he wanted Americans to know. And that Iran has the ideology of militant Islam, and he wants Americans to know, he said, that they are now and will always be an enemy of America, that they are both competing for the crown of militant Islam, and that both want, Iran and ISIS, both want to impose an Islamic empire first in that region and then the world. We have heard no one from the American political scene, including Ted Cruz, Scott Walker, any of our supposed conservatives, none of them have expressed that sentiment right there to the American people.
Absolutely. And you know what? I even saw the looks of Rand Paul today. I don't know why Senator Rand Paul had that sort of depressed look on his face. You would think someone like Rand Paul would be a little bit more excited about the Israeli Prime Minister coming there. Because that's historic, having the Israeli Prime Minister coming to speak to a joint session of Congress. And it was historical enough, Andrea, that the Israeli Prime Minister came to not speak once, but this was his third time. This could be very well his last time, considering the Obama administration sent their own 2012 campaign team over to Israel to work for the opposition candidate.
Yeah, well, getting back to, about Rand Paul, I mean, the libertarians typically, they think that we're kind of trumping up this thing of the threat of radical Islam. And, that's probably the one hiccup for Rand Paul ever to becoming nominated, even getting the Republican nomination. And, I don't know why we have so many people in this country. This is the second Holocaust. And that was another reference that I thought Bibi, bringing Elie Wiesel there today, what a moment that was, really brought tears to my eyes. And it was a message to Americans. Why are we recreating the denials that were going on prior to the Holocaust? Why are we doing that again? Where were the lessons learned?
And you know what I found interesting? They say that President Obama was too busy to watch or even come to watch Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to watch his speech today. Yet at the same time, our House of Representatives passed today the Homeland Security bill without conditions and sent it over to President Obama to his desk, and he's supposed to be signing it within the next 24 to 48 hours. Oh, wait, I thought the president was too busy to do anything else today. So it explains the hypocrisy of this White House.
Yeah, and, and the GOP. The GOP had the hand of the American people on their backs to hold up their weak spines. The American people said to them in November, we want to stop the tyrannical overreach of the Obama administration, in particular with the amnesty. There was absolutely no reason, no justification, no excuse for Boehner. And it was no accident that Boehner did it today, by the way.
Yeah,
he felt like they were getting the you know what I mean? The American people are like, yay, Boehner, he brought Bibi here. And then Boehner used this as an opportunity to backdoor in and try to slide it under the door on the American people. But the American people are paying attention, Boehner.
Andrea, I certainly hope the American people will wake up to the fact, especially the people in the state of Ohio, and finally say to Boehner, enough is enough. It's time to get rid of you.
But he's not. But it's not just him.
Pastor, the previous Speaker of the House, who was a Republican, at least he got stuff done. This Speaker of the House hasn't gotten crap done, in my opinion.
Is he doing it on his own, though? Is he doing it on his own, or does he have the support? Where is the rest of the GOP? I've heard Marsha Blackburn came out and spoke out against it, but where's the rest of the GOP today? Why are they not coming out and saying, you know what, Speaker Boehner, this was wrong. This is not what the American people voted for in November. And you did this without the support of the GOP.
And why do you think that former Congresswoman Michelle Bachmann decided to retire and not run for another term? She's tired of the bureaucracy over in D.C. She was tired of saying, hey, I'm willing to go over here and fight for you. She was willing to fight against Obamacare, but you know what? I have to stick up for former Congresswoman Bachmann on this issue. She can say as much as she wants to defeat Obamacare, but you can't defeat Obamacare, not as a single person. You need a contingent of people to come behind you to be able to defeat it. So as much as she could say she wants to help defeat it and repeal it, she can't do it by herself, and I can understand why she decided to leave office.
Absolutely, because, and the same thing about J.C. Watt. I don't know if you remember him. He left the Republican Party and left office, years ago. And, it's because it's, trying to push a boulder uphill. Some of these people have really well-meaning hearts to want to really return America back to its constitutional republic greatness. And then they get there, they get elected by people who, believe in them and believe, that they are who they say they are. And then they get to D.C. and they get marginalized and overrun by the Boehners. And the American people need to stop feeding the monster. They need to cut off the blood supply to the tumor that is the rhino part of the party. And you're right. It needs to happen in Ohio. They need to stop reelecting that idiot Boehner, as well as every other Republican who has been complicit. And people are saying, replace Boehner with Gowdy. Well, you know what? I'm not, a huge fan of Gowdy either. I've become convinced that he's nothing but good at giving political theater and not actually providing any actions to back up his words.
Absolutely, and this to note, ladies and gentlemen, the count on that House bill was 257 to 167 on that bill, and that bill is worth $40 billion just for this fiscal year. So $40 billion on the budget, and we're not even going to be fighting against illegal immigration and what the likes of President Obama's executive actions. It shows to tell you not only Democrats are hypocrites, but Republicans are too. And ladies and gentlemen, I don't often say this enough on the program. If you are ticked off as I am about what the GOP is doing, become a nonpartisan like me, or if you're in a state that allows libertarians, become a libertarian. Because you know what? I don't think this party is going to do anything until you actually decide to leave the party and you vote for candidates not within the GOP, and we start bringing up some candidates who are not running on the GOP but are running for American values.
You're right, because as long as you continue to give them money and they know that they have our vote, it's kind of like the Democrat Party with, the blacks. They take them for granted, so they make promises, they never fulfill them, and then, but the black, typically en masse as a voting bloc, continue to vote for them, and so they don't ever feel like they have to do anything that actually provides any results for the black community because they already have their vote.
Sounds a bit
it's the same
like
thing
Al
with the
Sharpton.
conservatives and the Republicans.
Yeah, absolutely.
What's that?
Absolutely. Oh, Corey was saying it sounds a lot like Al Sharpton, but Al Sharpton, I believe, is another conversation for another day, I believe. I think that should be sailed.
Yes, exactly.
So, Andrea,
Yeah, I'm just naming an example, people.
Yes. But Andrea, before we let you go, go ahead and tell folks what's coming up on this Thursday's Andrea Kaye Show at 12 Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific on Thursday night on 1170 KCBQ in San Diego.
Well, one of the things we're going to be discussing is the options for the conservative voters and the Republicans out there who are not seeing, the Republicans were given a mandate. There's no excuse for this. What are our options? Is a third party a viable option? Is the solution the Libertarian Party? And I'm going to have Alicia Dern on the show, who's my legal analyst. She also was worked at a very high level for Gary Johnson's third party presidential campaign previously. So she knows a lot of the election laws, a lot of the ins and outs of a third party, as well as the Libertarian Party. So we're going to be discussing that, the Libertarian Party and third party, and whether or not that's a viable option for us at this point, and whether or not that's really where we should be taking our time, our money, and our efforts. So we're going to be discussing that on this Thursday's Andrea Kaye Show, 9 to 10 Pacific time on AM 1170 in San Diego, and streaming at AM1170theanswer.com. Thanks so much for having me on your show, guys.
Yeah, pleasure having
Thank
you
you,
on, Andrea. Hope we didn't take too much away from your schedule. Sorry if we kept you a little long this evening.
Oh, no, it's just a thrill to be here. You guys are doing great work. Thanks again for having me on.
Thank you. Pleasure having you with us,
Good night,
as
guys.
always. That's Andrea Kaye, ladies and
Okay,
gentlemen.
bye-bye.
Check her out, 1170 KCBQ in San Diego on Thursday and Friday evenings at 12 Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific time, Thursdays and Fridays. For more information, go to 1170KCBQ, theanswer.com. I'm Jason Miller, and we'll be right back after this break on the Evan Miller Report.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
How you doing? John Grant here. When I'm not slaving over a hot microphone on the 405radio.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, I check out Sean and Clint here at Sackheads Radio. We all appreciate the best political bloggers, writers, and commentators. We either get them on our shows or we make fun of them, as it should be. So check us out live Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern or forever on the podcasts on the 405radio.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on the Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberties, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific for me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
I'm Jason Miller in San Diego, along with Corey Evan in Los Angeles. Welcome back to the Evan Miller Report right here on the SHR Media Networks. Glad you're with us. Looking at some other news we're following today, lawyers for Mohammed Enzoui's father have told ITV News and the Reuters news agency that there is no evidence that his son is Islamic State killer Jihad John. They said Jazwan Enzouzi was questioned by authorities in Kuwait for 3 hours on the Sunday before he was released without any charge or conditions. His father said, quote, "There's no evidence that his son, his face is covered," they told ITV News, referring to the videos featuring the masked killer. Other news today, Liberian President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf has called for a Marshall Plan for the Ebola-affected countries of West Africa. She was referring to the massive U.S. aid program for Europe launched after World War II. Her comments came after Sierra Leone was immediately granted more than $80 million to help end the Ebola outbreak and recover from its effects. Chadian troops have seized a strategically located northeast Nigerian town from Boko Haram, but not before Boko Haram The Boko Haram extremists killed hundreds of civilians, according to Chad's military. The Chadian forces regained control Monday of Dinakwa, a town occupied by the militants for weeks, said Chad's military spokesman, Colonel Aswi Brogdama. One soldier was killed and 34 were wounded, most by a suicide bomber. Brogdama said on national television, Dinakwa is at a crossroads to border crossings with Chad and a route north to Lake Chad. An update on a story we brought to you yesterday. The Venezuelan government says the United States has 2 weeks to dramatically reduce the number of diplomats it has in its country. She said the goal was Foreign Minister Delis Rodriguez said the goal was to bring the balance down to 17 on the number of Venezuelan diplomats in the U.S. On Saturday, President Nicolas Maduro said the U.S. had been meddling in Venezuelans' affairs. This gives the U.S. 2 weeks to cut 80 diplomats. And now we'll send it over to Corey Evan, and he has some of the day's other national news tonight. Corey.
Right. In the Americas, South America's got one of the most active volcanoes there, erupted early today in southern Chile, spewing heavy smoke into the air as lava surged down its slopes, prompting authorities to evacuate thousands of people. The Villarrica volcano erupted around 3 a.m. local time, according to the National Emergency Office, which issued a red alert and ordered evacuations. Elsewhere, back home in the U.S., according to our friends over at ABC News, lawyers for the widow of one of the Boston Marathon bombing suspects is under active investigation and could face potential criminal charges related to the deadly blast, at least according to law enforcement. A spokesman for the U.S. Attorney's Office and the FBI declined to comment, and authorities had no decision had been made on whether to eventually bring charges, while prosecutors concentrate on the trial of Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, Russell's brother-in-law. And one that I teased at the beginning of our show, in our continuing battle against global socialism, at least federal agents on Tuesday raided more than 36 maternity hotels in Southern California where foreign women gave birth, allegedly for the sole purpose of having a U.S. citizen baby, authorities said. The maternity tourism sites included apartment complexes in L.A., Orange County, and San Bernardino County, where authorities believe the businesses housed the foreign nationals about to give birth, federal officials said. Those targeted residents are believed to have catered largely to women from China who paid $15 to $50 for lodging, transportation, and food, according to a statement by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Jay, very, very bad to hear about that one going on. I never wanted to hear a story like that. The fact that the Chinese are taking advantage of the fact that anyone born on U.S. soil is automatically a citizen. Sickening, isn't it?
It is. Quite sickening indeed. What else do you have in tonight's Global Socialism?
That's what I've got. What do you got in global socialism?
All right. Well, what we have tonight, 3 lawmakers refused to attend Idaho's Senate daily invocation after objecting to the offering of a Hindu prayer. Ronit Zain, a guest chaplain, gave a lengthy prayer in both English and Sanskrit on Tuesday that focused on selflessness and peace. Senators from both sides of the aisle shook his hand and thanked him for coming. Fulfill all your duties. Action is better than inaction, Zaid said. He continued to say, even to maintain your body, you are obligated to act. Selfless actions imprisons the world. Act selflessly without any throughout of personal profit. However, 3 lawmakers, all Republicans, only came back onto the floor once the prayer was over. Senators Stephen Vick of Dalton Valley, Cheryl Nicole of Cottonwood, and Lori Den Hartog of Meridian, Idaho. Prayer is a common event in Idaho's Republican-controlled state house. The Idaho Senate and House convene each day with a prayer by the chamber's chaplains from Christian denominations, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. And most lawmakers cite their religion in the Harris bios for the state's legislative directory. Nuxall says she declined to attend because she believes in the United States as a Christian nation. Amen, ma'am. Go back with the story. She said, quote, Hindu is a false faith with false gods. I think it's great that Hindu people can practice their religion, but since we're in the Senate, we're setting an example of what we, Idaho, believe. Nicole also added that she wished that the Senate had conducted a Christian prayer along with the Hindu invocation. Beckett announced his objections the day before, saying he would ask his colleagues to join him. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's what we got going on in tonight's Global Socialism. And let's go over to Corey Evan, and he has that favorite little bit he likes to do at the end of each one of these little segments.
So, when will Congress grow some gonads and fend off abomination and Islam?
Woohoo!
How will we deal with those who abuse national sovereignty? And what on earth is a donkey man? Stay tuned for developments in our continuing battle against global socialism.
And now it's time for lawsuits across America. The cases are real. All rise for the Honorable Corey Evan.
Thank you as always, ladies and gentlemen. Please be seated and come to order. Lawsuits Across America is now in session. First time on the docket, the mother of a 12-year-old who had a pellet gun when he was fatally shot by Cleveland police said Tuesday that the city was disrespectful of her son by suggesting he died as a result of his own actions. Tamir Rice's mother addressed the city's response to her family's lawsuit a day after Mayor Frank Jackson apologized for wording in a court document in which the city's lawyers said the boy died as a result of his own actions. Samaria Rice said she also wants an apology for her son's death. Quote, I have not yet received an apology from the police department or the city of Cleveland in regards to the killing of my son, and it hurts, she said. Benjamin Crump, one of the family's attorneys, said the city law department's wording was shocking and disrespectful. The mayor apologized Monday for the wording in the document, saying it was poorly worded and offensive. The court documents filed late last week by the city said Tamir's injuries and the subsequent complaints for damages stemmed from his actions and failure to exercise due care to avoid injury. It similarly said the injuries, losses, and damages cited for his relatives in the complaint were directly and proximately caused by their own acts, not by the city. The city plans to alter the wording in the documents, the mayor said. Another Rice family attorney, Walter Madison, said the city's response suggests that children should act like and handle all situations like adults. And Jay, you know that not all kids are fully equipped to handle things that way. So you have to give some concessions. Not a lot. You don't have to coddle them every single step of the way, but you have to understand that they're not fully developed in the brain yet. They haven't yet learned all those skills. So the fact that the Cleveland PD worded this document that way proves that they need to be a lot more careful. Next up, a longtime Goebbels, Michigan public schools teacher is taking the school district to court, alleging that he was denied the right to fight a 2013 suspension from his job for slapping a female student on the arm. It names as defendants the school district, Superintendent Jeff Rylander, and Board of Education members Brian Beam, Terry Doyle, Bonnie Miller, Mitch Smith, and Daniel Wamhoff, according to MichiganLive.com. Michael Ports is being represented by Grand Rapids attorney Felipe S. Iorio. The 10-page lawsuit, which was filed in February, is rooted into a November 11, 2013 complaint that was filed against Potts by a student alleging that he slapped the student on her upper arm. The complaint, according to the lawsuit, led to Potts having a meeting on November 11, 2013 with Rylander and the girl's mother. After the meeting, the lawsuit says Rylander told Potts he was not going to be disciplined for the event, as Superintendent Rylander had found that any physical contact was done in a joking fashion and with no intent to harm the student in any way. But one day later, Potts was placed on paid admin leave, and then on December 19, 2013, he was given a written reprimand, suspended for 10 days without pay, and removed as basketball coach for unprofessional conduct on November 11, 2013. I say they are overreacting if it is indeed just a joking slap to the arm, you know, just the normal thing that friends do, or parents that are on that kind of relationship with their kids, you know, they're just able to, shut up, you know, the way that we used to joke back and forth when we were sharing an apartment, Jay.
Yes, Corey. Let's not share all our personal information, especially the time that
No, I'm just saying
that you made game show jokes.
Yeah, I love making game show jokes. In fact, I'm planning on going to one of those open mic nights and going off, but at any rate, that's another conversation for another day. Finally, U.S. District Judge Lucy Koh in a San Jose, California courtroom on Monday raised no objections about a $415 million settlement that would end an ongoing anti-poaching class action suit involving Apple, Google, and other large tech companies. Co rejected a previous $324.5 million settlement last August after one of the plaintiffs in the case objected because the deal was too low, according to Reuters. Tech workers filed the antitrust class action suit against Apple in 2011, Google, Adobe, and Intel, alleging that the four companies reached an anti-poaching agreement that resulted in less job mobility and lower salaries. So, interesting thing developing there. Now they're putting the money up, and I bet that someone's going to complain that even that's not enough. But I'm sure that I'm sure that's the same guy that filed the $2 undecillion lawsuits against everyone in New York. Speaking of which, I'll dismiss lawsuits across America, and I will go right into our business report because we got some interesting stories in there as well. Starting off with, if it'll work properly, there we are. Pickup and utility vehicles provided an uptick for U.S. auto deals in February, even as many makers reported lower than expected results due to frigid temperatures and lackluster sales of cars. Automakers sold 1.25 million cars and trucks last month. That was up 5.3% from a year ago, but down about 30,000 vehicles from what industry analysts expected, according to the Detroit News. Many consumers who did brave the winter weather drove off with a new pickup or SUV. Fiat Chrysler, General Motors, Toyota, and others highlighted increases in pickup and utility vehicles as their main drivers for sales last month, as the sectors continued to outperform the industry by increasing 11.8% in February. Car sales fell 1.4%, which is a shame because me and Jay both own cars and we love our cars. But that's another conversation for another day. Moving on, Best Buy, the largest U.S. consumer electronics chain, on Tuesday reported higher than expected quarterly earnings on a strong holiday season and said it would buy back stock for the first time since 2012. Ha ha ha, harkening back to the days when Ozzy and Justin Bieber got together for that Super Bowl commercial, Jay. CEO Hubert Joly said on a conference call that Best Buy planned this year to start a cost-cutting effort to save $400 million over the next 3 years. It'll also focus on improving merchandising, opening new store-in-store formats under its TV and kitchen businesses, and increase private label products this fiscal year. The company's shares rose 1% in morning trading as investors appeared to shrug off lower than expected revenue. So it's going to be interesting to see how Best Buy saves themselves from Circuit City-style fate. But they're managing it one day at a time. And Jay, another note here, it's International Pancake Day, and over at IHOP, they're celebrating by giving away free short stacks of buttermilk pancakes and asking customers to consider leaving a donation for Children's Miracle Network hospitals or other designated local charities. The restaurant chain's been doing this since 2006. Every year they've had National Pancake Day, I got confused there because National Pancake Day and International House of Pancakes, it's easy to confuse the two. But last year they did raise around $16 million, so they must be doing something, right?
Well, all I gotta say is, if you're in the state of Colorado, better watch out. They might be putting pot inside those pancakes. That's all I gotta say on this.
You really think they do that?
I never know. With the way this nation's going these days, you might get just a little bit of something inside your pancakes. I'm just saying, better watch out for your kids and make sure to ask the manager of that joint, hey, is your cook eating from the city of marijuana?
Good idea. Thank you for the advice, Jay.
As always.
And that's what I've got for business. Moving on to entertainment.
Yep, let's go ahead and do it.
Right, NBC Universal is in negotiations to recruit its former news head, Andrew Lack, back to the network following the Brian Williams crisis and a series of other management missteps across the news division. A person briefed on the discussion said Tuesday, according to the New York Times. Executives are in discussions to reinstate Mr. Lack into a senior role at NBC News, but it's not clear what exactly that role would be, said the person who declined to be identified, because the talks are continuing. And I'll bring you the updates on that as they become available. As you know, Jay, Andrew Lack was president of NBC News from 1993 until 2001. So you know that he's got staying power once he gets in. He stays in for at least 8 years. Who knows? Anyway, moving on. Carrie Underwood has entered motherhood. The 31-year-old country singer welcomed a baby boy, Isaiah Michael, to the world Friday with hockey player husband Mike Fisher. Underwood took to Twitter on Tuesday to share a sweet photo of the child's first child, only showing his hand and part of his mouth. Underwood hinted they were expecting a son while hosting the CMAs with fellow country crooner Brad Paisley. Paisley spilled the secret during the live broadcast shortly after the pregnant American Idol alum whispered her baby's gender into his ear on stage. And, of course, Underwood yelled, quote, "What's wrong with you? You gotta be kidding me. You kept that secret for a whole 2 minutes. Hashtag Brad blew it." And get this, Jay, heading to the big screen is Edward Snowden. Or at least an actor that looks like him. Open Road has released the first photo of star Joseph Gordon-Levitt as Edward Snowden in Oliver Stone's upcoming thriller Snowden. In the first image on Variety.com, which I will send to Jay to post up on the Facebook page, I want him to see it first before he puts it up. Edward was an ordinary man who unquestioningly served his country. In the pic he's shooting, which is currently shooting in Munich before moving on to locations around the world. Open Road Films will release Snowden in the U.S. this Christmas. Oh, Jay, you got some breaking news, it sounds like.
Yes, I do, and we're going to get this in right before we end tonight's program. According to local station WBRC-TV over in Alabama, the Alabama Supreme Court has now ordered probate judges to stop issuing marriage licenses to same-sex couples. You may remember earlier that a federal judge, ruled Alabama's ban on same-sex marriages to be unconstitutional. Alabama Supreme Court Justice Roy Moore told probate judges they did not have to issue the licenses, but another judge overruled Mr. Moore and told them to do so. But this is just coming into our newsroom. This is a developing story right now, and according to the court, we're just getting this information in. It says, quote, as done for approximately 2 centuries, Alabama law allows for marriage between only one man and one woman. Alabama probate judges have a ministerial duty not to issue any marriage licenses contrary to this law. Nothing in the United States Constitution alters or overrides this duty. We're still reading through the 148-page document and working to understand the implications of the ruling at this moment here at the Evan Miller Report. But once again, the Supreme Court of Alabama has ordered probate judges to stop issuing same-sex marriage licenses, and no reports yet on whether those current same-sex marriages will be suspended in the state of Alabama. We'll continue following this story here on the Evan Miller Report and bring you any new information we have via our Facebook page, facebook.com/The Evan Miller Report, and also on Twitter at EM Radio Report. And ladies and gentlemen,
oh, great stuff. That is wonderful to hear that they're fighting back against this.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
someone has to grow up here, don't they?
Absolutely. It's part of our continuing battle against global socialism, as we always say here on the program. Well, ladies and gentlemen, on that note, that is the Evan Miller Report for this Tuesday, March the 3rd, 2015. For Corey Evan, I'm Jason Miller, and I'd like to thank our analyst, Andrea Kay, from The Andrea Kay Show. Listen to her show on 1170 KCBQ here in San Diego, once again on Thursdays and Fridays at 12 p.m. Eastern, 9 p.m. Pacific Standard here, right on 1170 KCBQ. Again, for all of us here, we wish you a great night. Good night, everybody.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.